Over 60? Discover 4 life-changing nuts to embrace and 4 shocking choices to avoid forever. Henry stood at the edge of the farmer's market, surrounded by the colors and smells of fresh produce, a world that seemed to hum with life. Yet he felt like a shadow, meek and faded. The loss of his beloved Martha had crushed the vibrancy he once knew. At 62, with thinning hair and wearied hands, he blended into the backdrop, wrestling with loneliness and a startling diagnosis that threatened his independence. The doctor had spoken the words softly, but they echoed like thunder in his ears. High blood pressure, heart risks, a life tethered to medicine and restrictions. He wandered past stalls of sun-ripened tomatoes and sweet corn, a longing ache in his chest. Just as despair threatened to swallow him whole, a brightly colored flyer flapped in the breeze, catching his eye. Join our community wellness group. For life-changing nuts to embrace and 4 shocking choices to avoid forever. As hope flickered like the morning sun, he felt an unexpected pull. Inside the community center, laughter bubbled around him. The eclectic group of seniors felt alive, each sharing stories of love and loss, triumphs and regrets. Suddenly, he wasn't alone. There was Betty, her eyes twinkling with mischief, sharing how her daughter wouldn't let her eat fried food anymore, and Carl, with his faded cap, who'd spent years running a family farm. They talked about the burdens they'd carried, economic hardship, family loyalty, and the gnawing worry of aging. Together, we thrive, Carl said warmly, and Henry felt a stir of connection that brought a flicker of hope to his heart. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But just when Henry began to find comfort in routine, the news hit like a gut punch. The local developer planned to demolish the community center. Panic rippled through the group. This was their haven where friendships blossomed and laughter echoed. Henry felt righteous anger surge within him, a strength he didn't know he had. This fight was not just about a building. It was about their very identity, their connection. Gathering the seniors together, he led spirited discussions, the fire of determination igniting their spirits. They made plans, wrote letters, and rallied the townspeople. Each meeting drummed up energy in him, erasing the shadows of isolation. As the day of the town meeting approached, Henry felt the weight of fragility and purpose colliding wildly in his chest. Should he focus on his own health journey or fight for the people that had become his makeshift family? This was the moment he'd been waiting for, a pivotal choice in his life's trajectory. Would he rise for himself, or would he step up for them, the ones who had reminded him what it meant to live, to belong? His heart raced as he prepared to face the crowd, knowing that this fight could change everything. But would feeble hands tremble in the struggle? Would he have the strength to claim what was due to them all? The room buzzed with anxious energy as Henry stood at the front, heart pounding against his chest. Rows of faces stared back at him, some hopeful, others weary from the burdens they carried. He cleared his throat, a lump rising from the depths of uncertainty. "Thank you all for being here," he began, voice slightly trembling but steadying. "When I heard about the demolition, I thought our little sanctuary was gone. But then I realized." He drew in a deep breath. "We are more than a building. We're a community, a family." A murmur of agreement rippled through the audience. He clutched the edge of the podium, feeling the warmth of those around him. Each familiar face reminded him that he was not alone. Together, we have the strength to fight for what matters. For our gatherings, our laughter, for the stories we share. His words flowed, each syllable imbued with passion. Martha would have wanted me to stand up. A few heads nodded. Memories of lost loved ones flickered in their eyes. The bond formed by shared experiences, of joy and sorrow, felt palpable. Betty stood, her voice ringing bright as she added, "Henry's right. We need to show the world what we're made of. We're not frail. We've weathered storms. Let us make our voices heard." Each heartbeat echoed louder in his ears, the weight of their hopes surging through him. They were no longer sidelined by age or health. Together, they were a force. They began brainstorming, tossing out ideas between them like they were kids in a playground. Petitions, demonstrations, community events. Suddenly, Carl raised a hand. Why don't we organize a rally at the park? Bring the community together. The suggestion sparked enthusiasm. Inspired whispers flowed like a river. Yes, Henry cried. Imagine everyone showing up, families, friends, our beloved neighbors. It's time to remind them we matter. As the night wore on, ideas bloomed like wildflowers in spring. Hope began painting over the dreary backdrop Henry had worn for too long. Laughter bounced off the walls, weaving itself into a tapestry of resilience. The center felt alive again, a beacon of possibility against the looming threat. Just as plans solidified, a sudden chill swept through the room. News of potential pushback from the developer's team reached their ears. Speculations of legal battles, disruption, and hostility maimed the air. Panic threatened to creep back in. We can't back down, Betty urged, her fists clenched. We must fight tooth and nail. This is our home. But Henry felt a twinge of doubt. Could they really stand against a powerful developer? The fear clawed at him, whispering its own version of truth. Age had made him vulnerable, helpless. Then something shifted. Looking into the faces around him, he saw not despair but determination. They believed in something bigger than themselves. He was reminded of their stories shared that day, tales of survival and defiance. With newfound purpose, he stepped to the forefront again. His voice now was a battle cry. We can do this. Together, we can show them that our community is unbreakable. There was a spark in their eyes, a charge of electricity that sent energy coursing through the entire group. They were alive, ready to take on the world. As the meeting drew to a close, they set the date for the rally, a gathering of solidarity and hope. Henry's heart swelled with pride and fear. How could one small town fight back? Would the courage they had found together be strong enough for the challenge ahead? He stood in the afterglow of their collective resolve, heart still racing. This was just the beginning, but could they really forge a path against what lay ahead? The answer sat heavy in the air, waiting to be found. The sun peeked through the windows the next morning, casting a warm glow across the community center that felt renewed since the gathering. Outside, the town quiet and unassuming buzzed with whispers of change. Henry arrived early, a stack of flyers in his arms, ready to spread the word about the rally. Each flyer felt like a seed planted in fertile ground. As he pasted the first flyer on the board, he saw Mrs. Thompson trudging down the street. Her face always wore kindness, but today it exhibited a hint of worry, a line drawn across her brow. She was hesitant but approached, clutching her handbag tightly. Henry, she called softly, nearly a whisper. He turned and smiled. Mrs. Thompson, come to lend a hand? She nodded slowly, gaze darting to the flyer. I just don't want to make things worse. What if the developer retaliates? With a reassuring smile, he replied, we can't let fear rule our lives. We're fighting for something that matters. For you, for your grandchildren. We need your strength. Her brow unfurled slightly at his words. I'll help, she finally said, determination gleaming behind her eyes. And just like that, hesitation transformed into purpose. By midday, people began streaming in, like streams fed by melting snow. From neighbors to friends, they gathered ready to take action. Betty, her hands on her hips, rallied everyone in the center of the room. Let us get these flyers distributed. We need every single person in this town to know what's at stake. While the energy surged around him, Henry noticed Carl, who stood off to the side, eyes clouded with worry. He approached him with a gentle nudge. What's on your mind, my friend? Carl sighed deeply, eyes distant. I'm worried, Henry. This isn't just a rally. It's a battle. What if we can't win? Henry hesitated for a moment, the weight of Carl's concern settling on his shoulders. Maybe we won't win every fight, but we can sure as hell make our voices heard. Carl shrugged, still unconvinced. Yeah, but at what cost? What if we lose everything? The doubt lingered in the air, heavy and palpable. It hung between them like a barrier, ready to fracture their resolve. But Henry found himself staring into Carl's eyes, remembering what brought them here. It's not about losing everything. It's about standing up for what we love. As the day slipped by, voices rose and fell like waves crashing on a shore, filled with laughter and plans. Yet, moments of doubt resurfaced like unwelcome guests for Henry. As he plastered more flyers, He felt unease seep into his bones. The tension crested the next day when news broke the developer's team had issued a press release, vilifying the rally. They painted a picture of chaos and unrest, warning the community that such demonstrations might lead to repercussions. Fear trickled down into the town like rain on parched earth. Henry gathered everyone that evening, feeling the weight of doubt and distress hanging like low-hanging clouds. "Listen," he said, raising his voice above the murmurs. "I know there's fear. I feel it too. But what we're doing matters. We have to stand together." Silence blanketed the room as eyes shifted from him to one another, seeking reassurance. Finally, Betty raised her hand, voice steady. "What they say doesn't define us. We define ourselves by how we respond. We must not let fear take our voice." The room erupted with murmurs of agreement. The energy morphed, each voice strengthening the collective resolve. Henry's heart raced, intertwined with hope. But even as the resolve grew, an unsettling thought nestled in Henry's mind. What if they pushed too hard, and the walls they built came crashing down? What if hope summoned only a storm? As they began to plan amidst the rising fear, Henry's thoughts drifted to the rally, the gathering of their community. Would it be a moment of strength or a catalyst for chaos? One question weighed heavily on his heart. Could love be enough to withstand the pressure of a looming storm? The days rolled on, and with every sunrise, the air seemed to hum with tension. Henry paced through the town like he was preparing for the biggest performance of his life. He could feel the collective heartbeat of the community. It thumped loudly with every new flyer they posted, with every voice raised in solidarity. But the shadows of uncertainty loomed large at the cafe. Tables teemed with conversation. Henry sat with Betty and Carl, a half-finished cup of coffee growing cold in front of him. Betty was animatedly discussing strategies for the rally, but Henry's thoughts floated in a different direction. "Do you think we should do something more?" He finally blurted out, breaking through the buzz of voices surrounding them. Betty stopped mid-sentence, her brows knitting together. "What do you mean more? What if we host a community forum? A place where people can share their experiences, all the things that the developer's press release distorts?" He rubbed his temples, frustration spilling over. "We can't fight whispers with whispers." Carl looked conflicted, the eagerness of the rally battling against his worries. "But what if it turns ugly? People might say things that provoke them even more." Or, Henry interjected quickly, "It could strengthen us. A united front gets louder the more voices join." Betty leaned forward, her smile returning. "Henry's right. Let us gather everyone. We can talk, listen, and decide what to do from there. Let them see that we're not just a crowd, but a community." They jumped into planning mode, mapping out a date, location, and agenda. The buzz of anticipation filled the cafe, pushing fear further back into the corners of their minds. Yet, in the silence that followed each brainstorming session, Henry couldn't shake his own reservations. It was one thing to gather voices, and another entirely to listen to what they might say. Would they still be unified once the raw emotions poured out? A few days later, the community center buzzed with energy as the forum drew nearer. On the night of the event, Henry stole a moment for himself outside. The stars glimmered above, a stark contrast to the heaviness weighing down on him. He took a deep breath. This is it, he thought. The moment they'd either find their voice or lose it in the storm's fury. Inside, the seats filled quickly. Faces lit up with determination, but wary glances shifted between one another like branches in the wind. Much like the rally, whispers of doubt fluttered through conversations. How many in the crowd shared the same fears as Carl? Would they find balance, or would it push them toward chaos? As the forum began, Henry could feel the buzz, but it was quieter this time. There wasn't just excitement in the air. There was a longing and electricity that begged for connection. Each story shared felt like a thread weaving them closer together, stitching patches of fear and hope into the fabric of their community. Finally, a voice rose from the back. It was Mrs. Thompson, her hands trembling. "I've lived here my whole life, and I just want my grandchildren to feel safe." The weight of her words hung heavily, fostering vulnerability amongst the crowd. Henry could see the impact ripple across the room. Each word drew them in, weaving together a narrative stronger than fear itself. Yet, amidst the rising tide of solidarity, doubt pulsed underneath like a current. The forum unfolded, with emotional expressions cascading, but Henry's heart remained uneasy. As the evening drew to a close, he wondered would this shared pain crystallize into action, or just connect them through fear. He felt on the edge of something monumental, but unsure what would tip the balance. Were they truly ready to face what lay ahead, or was this just the calm before the storm? Henry glanced at the faces surrounding him, seeing both the hope and the uncertainty mirrored back. It was time to push harder and dive deeper. As the last voice of the night faded, a question lingered in the air. In the pursuit of home, how far would they go, and could they bear the weight of their own dreams? The following evening, the community center still echoed with the emotions of the night before. Henry found himself staring at a bulletin board plastered with colorful flyers, urging everyone to join the rally next week. It felt like the culmination of their hard work, but doubt crept back in like an unwelcome guest. With each passing day, the tension in town thickened. In the streets, conversations flared up, some filled with hope, others laced with fear. Henry brushed past familiar faces, neighbors, friends, even strangers who now seemed so connected by an undeniable struggle. He felt their worries and dreams pressing against him, a collective weight that sank deep into his chest. At the cafe the next day, Henry met with Betty and Carl again. The energy in the room felt electric, yet uneasy. Coffee was stirred absent-mindedly, the chatter muted. What if we incorporate a way for everyone at the rally to share their stories again? Carl suggested, glancing at Henry. Like an open mic? Henry studied Carl, gauging his apprehension. That could either empower people or send us spiraling into chaos. Maybe chaos is what we need to confront, Betty offered, her eyes alive with passion. Real feelings will come out, and we can channel that into something positive. What if it drives a wedge instead of drawing us together? Carl interjected, his voice tense. If we don't confront our fears, we'll never know what we're capable of, Henry replied, finding strength in his own conviction. People shouldn't feel alone in this. They need to know they matter, and their story matters. The next few days flew by in a flurry of planning. As the sun set each day, Henry wrestled with his thoughts. He was excited for the rally but terrified at what might happen when the floodgates opened. Would they truly stand together, or would their wounds burst into a storm that would sweep them apart? When the rally day arrived, the air pulsed with potential. The community center overflowed, filled beyond capacity, with faces shining bright and anxious. Children dashed around, laughter permeating the charged atmosphere. Henry stood on the makeshift stage, gripping the podium like a lifeline, his heart pounding a steady cadence against his ribs. He looked out over the crowd, a sea of familiar faces bathed in warm light, yet shadows danced in their eyes. Thank you all for being here, he began, voice steadying, reverberating through the gathering. Today, we stand together, not just as individuals, but as a community committed to hope. As voices began rising in passionate stories, he watched people stand up, fists raised, each word a step toward reclaiming their narrative. The raw vulnerability poured out of them, and with each tale shared, the bonds of fear slowly twisted into threads of strength. But just as the atmosphere reached a crescendo, the door swung open. A group of men dressed in suits strode in, an unsettling contrast to the warmth of the crowd. There was something unyielding about their presence, casting an immediate shadow across the room. Henry's gut tightened. He felt the shift. Curiosity turned into defensiveness. Unity could fray. One of the men stepped forward, and silence fell like a heavy curtain. We're here to set the record straight, he declared, words sharp as shards of glass. You need to know what you're risking with these protests. Henry's heart raced. He could sense the tension ebb and flow like a tide threatening to drown them. Was this the confrontation they feared, or the call to action they longed for? As the man continued speaking, a rush of adrenaline pulsed through Henry. Time slowed. Would this challenge break them apart or force them to rally together stronger than ever? I won't let them tear us down, he murmured to himself, clenching his fists. The moment was here, but how would they respond to this new threat? Would they sink into fear or rise in defiance? The answer hung heavily in the air, and Henry felt the crowd's energy shift. It was as if they were all teetering at the edge of a precipice, ready to leap into the unknown. The man's words sliced through the charged atmosphere, creating an electric tension that crackled like static in the air. Henry could see the uncertainty flickering in the eyes of those gathered. It wasn't just fear. It was a shared vulnerability, an overwhelming sense of what was at stake. Listen, the man continued, his voice booming over the whispers of the crowd. You think standing together makes you strong? It's a fool's errand, risking everything you've built. We've prepared for this, and we'll do whatever it takes to protect our interests. Henry could feel the pulse of anxiety ripple through the crowd. He stepped forward, his heart racing, feeling the weight of their collective apprehension. What interests do you mean? He challenged, his own voice steady, emboldened. The interests that divide us or unite us. A low murmur spread through the crowd, growing in strength. People began to shift, leaning in, drawn into the heat of the moment. They wanted answers, and Henry could sense the swell of determination rising around him. The man in the suit squared his shoulders, his face a mask of indifference. You call this unity? It's just a thin veil for your weaknesses. His eyes narrowed. People are going to get hurt if you continue down this path. Henry's mind whirled. This was not just a battle for their stories. It felt instead like a confrontation with raw power that wanted to smother their hope. His fingers clenched the podium tighter. We are not weak, he shot back, gaining courage from the faces behind him. And we won't let fear dictate our future. Betty, standing close to the front, found her voice. This isn't about fear. It's about change. Our town needs us to fight for it. Her words cut through the numbness, and Henry could see the spark ignite in others. They began to rise, one by one, emboldened by the reality of their shared struggle. Carl joined in, his voice trembling but resolute. We've suffered long enough. We're tired of being talked down to by people who don't understand our lives. With each word, the crowd thickened, binding them together tighter than before. They were pushing back, a wave of defiance swelling to the surface. Henry felt the tide shift. A moment of incredible possibility crackled in the air, and he was ready to grasp it. The lead man took a step back, an uncertain gleam flickering across his face. Henry seized the chance. If we are all here for what is right, then we will not be silenced. He could barely hear his own voice over the roar of the crowd. Let us make this our moment. Let this rally be a testament to our belief in each other. Voices erupted, echoing his fervor, chanting words of unity. It was beautiful chaos, a rumbling reckoning that felt like liberation dancing through the room. But just as the embers of hope flared bright, one of the men in suits turned to face the crowd sharply. If you ignore our warning, you will regret this. We will make sure of it. The threat hung heavily, like a storm cloud building on the horizon. Hearts raced, and the joy of their united front quickly twisted into doubt. Fear seeped in again, coiling like a snake around their resolve. Henry took a deep breath, aware that the real test had just begun. Could they keep this momentum alive? Would they stand as a fortress, or would the bonds of fear crack under pressure? He felt the crowd's gaze upon him, weighting their hopes and anxieties woven into the fabric of this moment. The sound of urgency throbbed in his ears, and he knew the answer lay in their hands. How do we respond? He implored, scanning the crowd's eager faces. Would they rise or falter when met with adversity? In that stillness, everything was at a precipice, and Henry understood, with absolute clarity, that this was just the beginning. The tension in the room throbbed with palpable urgency. Henry could see it in the set jaws and clenched fists of his neighbors. They wanted to believe. They had to believe. But the shadows of doubt crept in like morning fog, subtle yet suffocating. He could almost hear their hearts beating wildly, each pulse a reminder of everything they stood to lose. Together, he shouted, feeling the weight of those gazes on him. No one can take our spirit unless we let them. The crowd buzzed, uncertainty coursing through its ranks. It was a fragile unity, just beginning to take shape, the fibers of their hope interlacing, but still vulnerable to the winds of fear. Their eyes darted back to the suits, still hovering at the edge of the gathering like vultures waiting to pick apart a carcass. Betty squeezed Henry's arm, her grip firm, anchoring him. What do we do next, Henry? We can't just stand here. The urgency in her voice cut through the tensions, reminding him they had a choice. He scanned the faces around him, searching for common ground. Then, inspired by a surge of camaraderie, he declared, we organize. We take action. We show them that our town won't bow down. A cheer erupted, shaky but alive. Carl stepped forward, emboldened. How about we hold meetings? Gather ideas? We can't be a target if we stand together. Exactly, Henry said, feeling the surge of adrenaline. We spread out, talk to our neighbors, share our stories. There's power in numbers. The energy shifted, and it was as if the very air grew lighter. One by one, heads nodded, resolves firming up like steel. This flicker of belief was like a spark to tinder the room began to pulse with determination. But from the shadows, the men in suits didn't remain silent. The lead man scoffed, anger simmering beneath his cool facade. You think you can just ignore the consequences? You think they'll just let you walk away unscathed? His voice sliced through the unity they were trying to build, injecting doubt and fear. Consequence of what? Betty yelled back, her voice ringing out as strong as a bell. Ignoring us? For too long, we've been the invisible ones. This ends now. We are not afraid. Henry's heart swelled at her words. They were pushing back, their voices gaining strength. They weren't just talking about what they could lose anymore. They were fighting for everything they could gain. Then, suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the hall. A chair had tipped over in the back. The crowd fell quiet, heads turning. A woman with fear in her eyes stumbled into the open space, breathless. I overheard them discussing, she gasped, struggling to collect herself. They're planning something. Something big, and it's not good for us. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Henry felt a chill seep into the warmth of their newfound courage. What do you mean? He asked, urgency tightening his voice. They want to tear down the community center to build something that will drive us out. The fear in her voice was contagious. Murmurs turned into whispers of shock and disbelief. Henry's heart plummeted. The center wasn't just a building. It was the heart of their community. It was where they gathered, laughed, and connected. Every story shared within its walls spoke of contentment, survival, and strength. The crowd shifted uneasily, that shared sense of newly found resilience wavering. Have they fought for something already lost? Henry inhaled deeply, gathering his thoughts. Then we'll fight harder, he shouted, desperation rising in him. If they think we'll cower down, they have no idea the strength we hold together. As renewed voices surged in agreement, Henry felt something crackle in the air again, something electric. But a new question hung in the back of his mind. Was this fight already out of their hands, or did they even stand a chance? Let us rally, Henry called again, but uncertainty lingered like smoke, lingering around their hearts. We can do this, together. But he knew deep down that dark clouds were gathering, and the real challenge was just beginning. Would their flame endure, or would they be extinguished before they ever truly began? As the murmurs of fear died down, Henry felt the weight of his responsibility press upon him. He turned to the woman who had rushed forth, her pale face still marked with panic. Who were you listening to? What exactly did they say? They're from the city council, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Meeting with developers. They want to turn this land into something profitable. The community center? It's just in the way. The realization hit, like a heavy weight crashing down. Henry's chest tightened. It wasn't about the center alone. It was about everything they had built, the relationships, the sense of belonging, the stories that colored their lives. All right, he said, mustering every ounce of courage. We need to know exactly what we're up against. Every detail. If we're going to fight, we must be prepared. Betty echoed his determination. Let us divide into teams. We can gather information, find those who will stand with us, check out the council's plans. Good idea, Carl interjected, enthusiasm bubbling back into the room. We'll create a network. Those suits can't hide everything, and expecting a town to bend to their will? That's a mistake. Cheers rose again, their energy swelling like a tide filling up a shoreline. Here, hope was anchoring itself deeper into their hearts. But Henry couldn't shake the uncertainty gnawing at him. What could an information update do against powerful men with empty promises? Let us meet back in 2 days, Henry proposed. That gives us enough time to gather what we need. Bring your neighbors, your stories. This movement needs faces. As people began to disperse, their conversations buzzing with plans, an electric pulse lingered in the air. Henry caught Betty's eye, and for a moment, they locked gazes, a silent agreement passing between them. They were in this together, and no matter what, They wouldn't go down without a fight. In the days that followed, Henry found himself pacing around the community center, his heart racing with a mix of hope and fear. They needed a strategy. He and Betty began drafting flyers, their hands working swiftly, 100 thoughts swirling in Henry's mind. Each word they wrote felt like picking a fight with the very air around them. He rolled the paper between his fingers, feeling it come to life. Turning their fears into a rallying sea. As night fell, the community center glowed warmly, a beacon of what they stood to fight for. People began to trickle in, their faces etched with determination. Strangers became comrades, sharing their stories and dreams, creating bonds stronger than before. The room pulsed with energy, laughter and chatter filled the space. Henry watched as people began to write their visions for the future on sticky notes, each note a thread weaving them together, creating an unbreakable fabric of resistance. But as the warmth of community thrummed around him, a cold thought crept back in. What if the plans were already set in stone? What if they were merely delaying an inevitable loss? Henry, Betty's voice cut through his worries. He looked over as she approached, a flyer in her hand, one of the ones they created together. We need to get this out into the world. Let people know they can fight back. It starts with them coming here and joining us. No more behind closed doors. Yes, let us do it, he said, newfound determination surging through him. Not just our town. We need to reach out to surrounding towns, gather people who believe in community. They might be able to join our fight. As the night wore on, plans solidified, ideas mingled with adrenaline. Hope burned bright, a flame igniting courage. But just as he felt the tide turning, a sudden silence fell. The door swung open, and everyone turned to see a tall figure step inside. Henry's heart sank. It was one of the men in suits from before, his eyes scanning the room coldly, a smirk playing on his lips. Seems you're organizing quite the party here. I have to say, I'm impressed. A hushed tension enveloped the space. Henry felt the eyes upon him, like 1,000 whispers urging him to respond. Would he let the rising fear extinguish their flame? Would this be the moment they faltered? He took a deep breath, the weight of the moment hanging heavy. What do you want? He called out, feeling the collective heartbeat of the room quicken. The man leaned against the door frame, confidence draping around him like a cloak. Oh, just a friendly reminder that you're playing with fire. The crowd held its breath, waiting for the next words to ignite either fear or resolve. Henry swallowed hard, steeling himself for whatever was to come next. Would they stand tall, or would the forces against them prove too powerful? As the tension reached a boiling point, the question lingered. How far were they willing to go to protect what was theirs? Henry's voice rang out, steady despite the storm raging inside him. You think you can intimidate us? You don't know what this community is made of. The man chuckled, an unsettling sound that danced through the air like an uninvited guest. Oh, I know all about the strength of tight-knit communities. But let us be real. The land, the plans, they aren't going anywhere. Those who resist will simply find themselves on the losing side. Henry's heart pounded against his ribs, but he held his ground, the crowd around him a living wall of support. Betty stepped closer, her presence grounding him. We're not going to just accept what you decide for us. This is our home. We built it. The man straightened, his smirk fading into something colder. I admire your spirit. But spirit won't stop bulldozers or construction crews. If you truly wish to fight this, you will need more than passion. And trust me, it's more than paper and words. The challenge hung in the air, a gauntlet thrown down. Henry could practically feel the weight of everyone's gaze, each pair of eyes urging him to step forward, to push back against the looming threat. Silence filled the room, pregnant with possibility. What do you suggest we do then? Henry finally asked, mischief mingling with defiance in his voice. Roll over and let you take what's ours without a fight? Not a chance. The man's demeanor shifted slightly, surprise dancing across his features. You're certainly braver than I expected, but bravery doesn't always equate to wisdom. I suggest you drop this. You'll thank me later when the dust settles. Maybe you're the one who needs to understand how community works. Betty shot back. We're not interested in what you think is best for us. He leaned back, feigning casualness, but Henry could sense the tension beneath that bravado. If you must be stubborn, then so be it. But my team isn't just suited for boardrooms. We can play this game, too, and we won't lose. With that, he turned, striding out with a final trace of that unsettling smirk, leaving an echoing hush behind him. The door thudded closed, releasing the air from Henry's lungs, who didn't realize he had held it in. What now? A voice murmured from somewhere in the crowd, tension still thick among them. Now, Henry exhaled. Now, we gather what we need, people willing to step up, voices willing to stand out. We will show them who we are. Betty nodded vigorously. And we have to be smart. We need to figure out who his partners are, track their next moves. We can't be caught off guard again. A chorus of agreement washed over the room, and spirit surged back in. They had an enemy, faces to focus their anger on. They would no longer be just the townsfolk, whispering their fears into the night. They were a community, and they had a fight ahead. As plans began to spiral into reality, hands reached out to commit their hearts to the cause. Betty rallied the room into small groups, mapping out strategies. Each person brought something unique. Ideas bounced in a lively rhythm, interspersed with laughter and the occasional hopeful cheer. The room felt like it was bustling with the heartbeat of a living organism, but underneath that pulsing energy, worry nagged at Henry. Was there fire enough? He grasped the edge of the table, the possibility of defeat lurking in his thoughts. He cast a glance at Betty. She was deep in conversation, eyes alight with fierce determination. His heart swelled with hope, but was still shadowed by doubt. The night wore on, action plans unfurling like the bright pages of a promising future. Henry realized he hadn't felt this alive in years. The stakes were high, but so was the thrill of fighting back. As they finished up their strategies, a sense of purpose wrapped around him like a warm embrace. Yet, just as they were starting to feel that unity, the very door they had shut a moment ago swung open again. This time, it was not a lone figure but a group of men in suits, their faces all familiar, a formidable force striding in confidently. "Looks like we need to have a little chat," one said, locking eyes with Henry. The tension snapped like a twig. Would they have the strength to stand their ground again? Would chaos unravel all they had built? Or was this moment a catalyst for something bigger than any of them had ever imagined? Henry felt a surge of uncertainty that sent a chill down his spine. No turning back now. Would their courage light the way through the dark ahead? The atmosphere in the room crackled with tension as the men in suits took center stage, their expressions unreadable as they surveyed the gathered crowd. Henry stood solidly at the forefront, his pulse racing. His heart was pounding, the weight of his newfound community resting on his shoulders. "Another gathering, I see," the lead suit said, sarcasm dripping from his words. "Tell me, what is the plan this time? More tales of nostalgia, or a few empty threats?" Henry felt the surge of indignation bubble up inside him. "These are not just stories. This is about our lives, our community. You seem to think we're just a bunch of old folks clinging to the past, but you're underestimating us." The tension in the room was palpable, the crowd hanging onto every word. Betty stepped up beside him, her voice clear and unwavering. "We've spent years building connections, finding purpose, and you want to come in and tear it all down? Not on our watch." The men exchanged glances, their confidence wavering slightly. Henry seized the moment. "We are not mere bystanders. We're ready to defend our home. We will not be silenced." An audible ripple echoed through the crowd, a solid wave of agreement. Voices rose in solidarity. "Fight for us," echoed from the back. Hands began clapping, and hearts swelled with defiance. "You've rallied a crowd, but this isn't a fairy tale," the lead man shot back, trying to reclaim control. "You're playing a dangerous game. Our resources can easily overpower the likes of you." "Is that a threat?" Carl interjected, eyes blazing. "You hide behind your suits and false promises, but you don't realize the strength we have here. Community isn't just a word, it's our lifeblood." Henry nodded, feeling emboldened by these fiery voices. "We want to be intimidated, and we want to back down. You don't own us, nor do you get to decide our fate." The lead man gritted his teeth, irritation flashing in his eyes. "Very well. If you think this is a mere negotiation, you'll learn what real consequences look like." With that, they turned to leave, but the room buzzed with renewed energy. "We're not afraid," someone shouted, and the group erupted into a chant of unity. Together, together, together. In that moment, Henry knew they had crossed a threshold. They were no longer just fighting to save a building. They were standing up for dignity, legacy, and the bonds they had created. They were a force of nature, made stronger by each story shared, each memory cherished. Standing tall in front of them, he took a deep breath and addressed the crowd again. Today is a turning point, not just for us, but for every forgotten corner of towns like ours. We'll gather our strength, our stories, and present them to the community. We'll have a forum, right here. A chance for everyone to stand up, to speak out. A roar of approval surged through the crowd. Yes, they shouted. Let us make our voices heard. Days melted into a powerful whirlwind. Flyers fluttered through town, stories swapped over coffee, and plans solidified. With each passing moment, the community center shone brighter, filled with laughter and purpose. Finally, the day of the community forum arrived. Henry could hardly contain his excitement and apprehension. The energy crackled as neighbors settled into their seats, and familiar faces filled the room with anticipation. He stood at the podium, feeling like a conductor ready to lead a symphony. Thank you, everyone, he began, feeling the warmth of their support envelop him. This is more than a meeting. It's a celebration of who we are. Together, we're showing that we won't be pushed aside. The crowd erupted in applause, their collective spirit lighting the room. One by one, community members stepped forward to share their experiences, their joys, and their fears, each voice adding life to the fabric they were weaving. An elderly woman wiped tears while recalling the laughter shared during holiday gatherings. A young mother spoke of the dreams she had for her children in this town. Each story resonated, affirming that they were all in this together. They were connected by love, loss, and a fierce commitment to protect what they cherished. As the forum continued, Henry could sense the tide of despair shifting, amplifying hope. The doubts that had haunted him melted away, replaced by an unwavering belief in their shared strength. Finally, near the end, a voice rang out. It was Mrs. Thompson, her hands shaking but her spirit shining bright. This place has given me a home, and I refuse to let it be taken away. I'll fight with all of you. We need each other now more than ever. The room erupted in applause, and Henry beamed with pride. Together, we are the heartbeat of this community. He clutched the podium, surrounded by a wave of determination. The men in suits may have underestimated their spirit, but now, it was time to show them the depths of their resolve. As the night wore on, camaraderie spread like wildfire, radiating a warmth that no one could extinguish. At the end, as they wrapped up the evening, Henry felt light, as if a weight he had carried for years had finally lifted. Together, they had ignited a fire of hope that even the most powerful forces could not smother. That night, they forged not only a sanctuary but a promise to be there for one another. Every step of the way the crowd began to disperse. Henry lingered, looking around at the friendships they had cultivated. Thank you all for standing with me, he whispered, heart full. We make a beautiful family. He now knew, without a doubt, that love and community could conquer all, and with that, a radiant smile broke across his face. They were ready for whatever came next, united in purpose, resilient in spirit, and they would never forget that they were stronger together. This is your moment to be part of something. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories that inspire and transform lives. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support matters. Comment below your reactions and feelings about this ending. It means the world to us. Share instantly this video with 5 friends who need to see this transformation happen. Together, let us spread the positivity. Don't wait not even one more second to share.